Surprise! Welcome to a special off-season episode of Magic Makers. Since the holidays are here, consider this a festive little treat because we just couldn't wait to share it with you. In our Magic Makers series, we explore the fascinating world of Imagineering and celebrate the individuals who bring Disney magic to life in so many ways. I'm Marissa, and I'm here with my co-hosts Stephen and Katie. In each episode, we shine a spotlight on the unique journeys of talented designers, storytellers, and innovators who have shaped the experiences we all cherish. Whether you're a dedicated Disney fan, an aspiring Imagineer, or simply curious about the artistry behind the scenes, you're in for an insightful conversation. Today, we're thrilled to chat with a true visionary in the world of interior design. There's so many different areas and roles that are a part of Imagineering. Today, we're excited to get the chance to speak with a former store designer for Walt Disney Imagineering, leaving her mark on beloved destinations like Epcot, Disney's Hollywood Studios, and the Walt Disney World Resort hotels. With her innovative contributions to the world of interior design and beyond, please welcome to the show, Becky Browne Allen.
Thank you.
Hi, Becky.
Hi, Becky.
Welcome.
Thanks for your time.
Happy to be here.
Yay.
We're so excited to speak with you since we've never spoken to anyone who's done any type of design, so we're really excited to hear all about it.
Yay.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this. I feel like it's a whole different perspective and there's so much that goes into it. So I'm really excited to hear about your experiences.
Yeah. It's a real niche place. So not a lot of people know that section of the design world at Disney exists.
Yeah. So we might have done a little bit of stalking, and we saw that, like us, I believe, that you began your Disney career as a hostess at Columbia Harbor House in Liberty Square, and then later moved into guest relations before becoming a store interior planner associate. And we love meeting Imagineers who got their start working operations in the parks, since all three of us did as well. How did those experiences lead to your transition into interior design at Disney?
Well, I was interested in Disney, became kind of like obsessed with the college program and reading everything that I could about it back in the day before there was like TikTok and Twitter and all of that jazz. So I was reading like blogs and live journals and finding people on rogue message boards. So I had applied. Well, I had planned to apply in the summer of 2002, and I back in the day, you had to like go to an in-person interview, like a whole info session and whatnot. And I had my dad pick me up, drive me to another school, go to an interview, sat through this whole thing, only to find out like I was majoring in architecture, and so there is you have to take the classes, all right in a row. There's no like skipping anything. So if I had missed, the fall semester, I would also have to skip the spring semester and just be a year behind. So I was like, oh, perfect. They have this summer program. I'll just do that. And so I show up at this presentation and the guy's like, we got this brand new thing. It's called the Advantage program. There's no more summer only. You have to do, if you want to do the summer, you also have to do the fall, because we were interviewing in the spring. And I was like so depressed. So I applied anyway, and I got in to do custodial in the fall, and I had like think long and hard and be like, no, I can't, like I don't want to, because you've already bonded with all the people you're going to school with, like especially in architecture, it's very much a like we're all suffering together. So it's like I didn't want to be put a whole year behind, so I declined the offer, and then applied again in the spring of my fourth year when I was graduating. And so that's when I got accepted into the Columbia Harbor House. And I was so excited because as a consolation prize for not getting through the college program in the fall, I went to Walt Disney World and my parents took me on the Keys to the Kingdom tour. Ooh. And they eat at the Columbia Harbor House. And I was like, oh, they have this soup and a bread bowl. It's fantastic. And then I get there on my first day and they're like, please don't mention the bread bowls. Like, because they had just stopped serving them. And they were like, we get people ask us for these bread bowls. Like there was still a task in CDS that was said cut bread bowls. And so like when you got assigned that task, you knew you had to go to the manager and be like, I need something to do because I got assigned to cut bread bowls. So from there, I was like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. I had gone to like a bunch of presentations while I was on the college program. I was like, do I want to do like an advanced internship? They didn't have very many at the time. They didn't have like all these internships at WDI. Like, I don't think they had anything that was at Imagineering. So I ended up going home to Virginia in the cold of January and interviewing at like places in Richmond to be an architect. And I was just like, I'm not really feeling it. And I thought I had stayed seasonal at the Harbor House. And I even went back and was like on the schedule to work like over a spring break. And they were like, oh, actually, your paperwork didn't go through. So you're actually not a part of the company anymore. But like, I was already on the schedule. So the manager was like, well, we need you to work. So I spent my entire trip daily trying to get my fingerprints processed to be rehired as I was working each day. It was a series of like crazy events of like trying to get into work each day. Like sometimes we'd walk along the road and have security pick us up like by Space Mountain. One time the like management intern had to come out to the front desk and like wave the CDS report for the day and be like, she's working, I promise.
Wow.
While that was happening, like before I got kicked out, before I got kicked, like, left, kicked out of the company temporarily, I had been applying to things through the hub, and I had applied to a part-time position in guest relations, which was so funny because the description was just, the job description just said, pimp out pal Mickey. Like the whole description was like was basically saying you were going to be responsible for pal Mickey, which then never went to guest relations at all. It went to the people working in the cinema. But that was a whole job description. And I was just like, well, they're the people who like came and did the tours at the Harbor House. So I had applied to that, and like, so they got that, and I got put on like sent through to the hiring managers, and the hiring manager was like, we never get food and beverage people in guest relations. It's always operations and whatnot. And it was like, but the Harbor House is our like partner. Like we love them for the tours. So like, I'm going to pick this person. So then I was like, well, I'm not actually in the company. I have to be. So it was this whole thing. So I finally ended up moving back down to Florida. I ended up having a part-time job in guest relations, and I had posted my resume on like monster.com and places, and some random architecture office in Orlando just called me up and was like, you went to a good school. Would you like a job here? And I was like, sure. So I moved down here, and I was for probably like 3 months, I worked 7 days a week, working in an architecture office, and then working Saturdays. At the time, thankfully, you only had to work 2 days a week to be part-time at Disney. So I was working Saturday, Sunday at the Magic Kingdom, and then the weekdays in an office. And then I got smart, and I realized that the office was doing 4 9s, and then you only work till noon on Fridays. So I switched my schedule so that I closed on Fridays and had Saturdays off, and then worked Sundays. And then after a while, I was just like, this office is a bunch of Looney Tunes people. And I don't want to be here anymore. And I want to have more time to be able to like apply for things at the Disney company. So I put in my notice. Well, I worked with Disney to see like, can I go full time? So they were like, it took until April of the following year. So it was almost there a year. And they were like, okay, we can give you a full-time TA. And I was like, that's enough for me. So I quit the architecture job. And within like 2 weeks, they were like, just kidding, you're full-time. It's not a TA anymore. I was like, fabulous. So I worked in guest relations for about 2 years full-time. I learned a bunch of different tours. I was a trainer. And as I was working there, I kept scanning the job postings, the internal job postings. And my roommate actually saw this one that was for a store planner. And I was like, this sounds interesting. And so I applied for it, and I got some interviews, and I remember I had to go to the HR for Imagineering and go through like all of their stuff, because they're like, we're technically a separate thing. And then I went to an interview with, they were like, okay, you made it through to like the second round. You need to meet with the like VP of retail development. And they're like, they're like, this guy at the time who was in charge, he was very into, what is it, taxidermy? But like
Oh.
taxidermy of like
Oh no.
bugs.
Oh.
So
no.
so he was very into like so his office was like black, and he had like, tarantulas on the wall and stuff. And they're like, well, if you can
Oh.
survive like sitting through in his office. But I actually was the runner up for that position, so I didn't get it. But that put me, one of the guys who was on like the panel to decide yay or nay on people was like, well, I voted for this girl, and he was in charge of a facility that was off property where they manufactured all of the fixtures and furniture for the merchandise locations at the time. And he was, his background was in architecture. So he was like, oh, this girl, her background is in architecture. I love that. Like, she also comes, knows a lot about the company, has a passion for Disney, because the person that they hired was someone who didn't really know anything about Disney. Love her, but he was like, there's a difference. And so he fought for like 6 months to create a spot for me, because he had a designer there who was this little old German man. Love him to death. He has like a degree from Germany in like window design. Like, it was a really cool like diploma thing they had, but he did all of their design work by hand.
Oh wow.
So the guy who hired me was like, we need someone who can take us into the 21st century and do all of our drawings on, in AutoCAD and whatnot. So I ended up over there and would work with the little German man named Bert. And we would like scan his drawings in, and I had to like teach him. I put little Post-it notes on, like, here's the button that you press to scan it, and I had to like create like a secret language. Like, I promised, like, this is what this is what you need to do in order to get it to get into the computer. One time he came to me, he's like, it won't send the email, because he like knew how to like attach the things to the email to send. Like, he had one of those digital cameras that takes a picture and stores it on a floppy disk.
Oh my gosh.
But he was trying to send like the pictures to me one time, and he was like, it's just not sending. Can you come check it? And he had typed the entire email in the to like the to box, so it just kept telling him it wasn't a valid email address.
No.
And he didn't understand what it was trying to tell him.
Oh my God. I guess like you don't really think about that, but like it's really a difference, especially when we were like starting out, like a difference in the technology coming in.
Yeah. It was crazy. But yeah, so I was there at that facility, which is an awesome spot, for 6.5 years. And then 10 years ago, they decided to shut it down. They were like, it's too much, because it was the only air-conditioned wood shop in the state of Florida.
Oh.
So like,
So-
for one thing, you're spending a lot of money air conditioning the facility. But they decided it made more sense for them to like bid out all of my designs to, get 3 bids and send it to the lowest bidder. So they shut down everybody who was out there, which it wasn't just the wood shop. Then there was also a theme production section. So they did all the characters that were on the castle for Disneyland's 50th.
Oh.
And just anytime there was like a 3-dimensional character. I have a really cool picture of all of us with the giant sorcerer Mickey. That's not what is on the back of the Dream or the Fantasy.
Oh, wow.
Can't remember which one. But it's so funny because it looks like such a tiny little Mickey when it's on the ship, but like he was ginormous. Like the
Massive.
whole building full of people like fit across the front
Oh
of
my
this
God.
Mickey. But yeah, so that's how I kind of ended up in that line of work. And over time, as I got doing things, I was like, well, I'm really kind of doing interior design now. So after I got laid off, I ended up almost immediately being rehired, because the way the lines of business worked was the work was coming from one section of the company, and from and then I was in another. And so they were like, well, we already, and it was just at the end of the fiscal year that they shut everybody down. But they had already planned out the work for the next fiscal year. And they were like, we already were planning on using you. So like, we don't know what
wow.
we're going to do. Like, we didn't have any say in whether or not you got let go. So I was gone for about 4 months completely. And then I was like rehired as a part-time contractor for like specific projects. And but coincidentally, the first day that I came in, the girl who had gotten that first position instead of me greeted me at the door and was like, just so you know, I put in my 2 weeks notice because I'm transferring to the interiors team at Imagineering.
Oh, wow.
And so I was able to eventually, after like 2 more months, be hired into her spot.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
Yeah. And so then while I was in that position, I was like, well, I'm doing all this because she had gotten her interior design license while she was there. And I was like, oh, I should do the same thing. So I borrowed some books and got all the study materials. And then the company paid for me to take the 3 tests that you have to take to be a nationally certified interior designer. But
Cool.
yeah, it's kind of a weird journey.
Yeah. You still do interior design today. So do you
Yeah.
like that then more than traditional architecture, I would say? What you originally went for?
So I actually just spent 6 months working full time in an office in downtown Orlando for an architecture firm
Oh, okay.
where I was hired as an interior designer, but I was the only one who wasn't an architect. So I was kind of thrown back into that architecture world, and it just kind of reminded me, like, why I didn't go into architecture because it's just so much more technical. You know, I like picking the colors.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be my ideal.
Yeah.
The beautifying of it. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm on
Yeah.
board with that.
Yeah. And like the details, like architecture gets into like the less exciting details of, how the concrete block interacts with the windowsill and all that jazz.
True. Yeah. I think I would prefer the interior design
Yeah.
part of it too. Well, I'm so interested as well in like the designing of retail spaces and how that kind of works. And I feel like there's just such a science to it as well. But what are some of the first things when you started working on newer projects that you kind of had to consider each time you jumped in?
Well, it kind of depended on the projects. We had like kind of 3 or 4 different distinct projects that we work on. Like there would be, if it was a brand new land and they're say, oh, new Fantasyland is going to have a retail location. That was actually for my role almost the least exciting one
Oh,
because
really?
I was the least amount involved. I was more like just consulting to make sure that they were taking into account everything that retail needed, so that they had enough space, that they were following the standards for retail. They have a system called Mufasa, which is their shelving system. So they had to make sure that they had everything, all the spacing right, so that all the hardware would fit, and all of that jazz. And so it was more of just like, yep, okay, you got it covered. And they'd figure out all the fun theming stuff and whatnot. And then there would be projects that were like if they were coming out with a new product, like I did the Build a Droid fixture. I think I did a lot of them, but the very first one went into Tatooine Traders, and they were just like, we're going to have this new product, and there are going to be all these little pieces, and you get to build your own droid. And we wanted to look like the Watto's like workshop from episode 1, but other than that, like just do whatever you want. Oh, and it has to go, between these 2 columns. And so, and then there were the projects that was just like, oh, we need 3 more of these gondolas in this shop, or we're redoing part of a shop, or we want to take out the old cash wrap and put in a new cash wrap. But yeah, I mean, so for example, the droid fixture project was, like I said, they just say, we have this product, and then you just kind of got to go from there. Just be like, well, here's the inspiration images of the workspace in Watto's workshop, and then here's the space that I have in Tatooine Traders, and then here's all these little droid parts, and then kind of make it all work together. And then that one, someone was like, hey, we should go to this office where at the time, you probably all know Push, the talking trash can thing from Tomorrowland. So the guy who ran that also did the R2-D2 that would go in the parades during Star Wars weekends. And he's got a crazy business. He does all kinds of stuff. He also does all the custom phone case stuff. I think he even does the ones at Universal and whatnot.
Oh, wow.
So his company, so they were like, we should go over there and see if they have leftover droid parts.
Oh, wow.
So we his office was down the street from our warehouse. So we drove over there and we were picking out. He also had done, so back in the day they had at Innoventions, they had Tom Morrow, the little robot guy.
Yeah.
And he had made that. So it was here's this Tom Morrow, but we were playing with them. So we put taxidermy eyeballs on him.
Oh,
so it was really creepy looking. But so we picked out all these droid parts, and then he was like, you want to come into my office? And I've got he had a pair of the self-lacing shoes from Back to the Future. This is before they came out with one. I think they sold them a few years ago. But this was before that, and so he just had all this stuff. He was into everything. But so we secured these droid parts, and then we took them back to our warehouse, and then the themies, as we called them, who were also, that was a great project because it was working with a bunch of guys who were also huge Star Wars fans.
Mm-hmm.
So they were can't believe I get to build this and work on it. And so they I was just I want it to look like this. And they were just all right. And they theme painted everything. And then we spent a day where we were just I was art directing where they were going to hang. We had an R2 dome, and they theme painted blaster marks onto it, so it looked and then we had I think we had a 3PO foot, and they added wires coming out of it, so it looked like it had been come off of him. So we spent all this time deciding we were going to hang all of that up. And then one day they brought me in and we were looking at everything, and they had just decided to paint all of their names on the underside of the counter in Orabesh. And they were like, oh, we should add you. So they put my name underneath in the middle. So
that's so
you
cool.
You could only see it if you turned your head and
looked under.
Looked underneath the counter.
You're a piece of history.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's been ripped out, but
darn it.
Yeah. Because I also did the cash wraps in that store, and I made one look like the a sand crawler with the Jawas, and I was just making it kind of look like it, and it was supposed to just be using normal materials. It wasn't even supposed to be theme painted. It was I picked out metal that was already aged, but they decided I get the girl who was building it was talking with one of the theme guys, and he's oh no, we gotta do better than that. So we decided to actually paint little windows on it as if it was the front of the sand crawler, and then he was painting in little Jawas. And then since the whole thing was rusty and whatnot, he already had red paint out, so he I'm walking by and he goes, wait a second, and he takes some of the red and he does a little bit of curly hair on the Jawa, and he's now you're on now you're in the cash wrap.
Oh my gosh,
that's so cute.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
On projects where you get to do that from start to finish and basically have free reign, how long do those typically take from start to finish?
Oh gosh, well, since that was just one fixture, it was probably only a couple of months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so not too bad from that side.
Yeah, there was nothing that was really years long, because we were doing small things. But
is there a difference because I know you worked on outside of retail as well, designing some different areas. Is there a difference in terms of how you are kind of creating that space from no matter what the different type of project is?
Yeah, so a lot of the stuff that I did when I was at Disney that wasn't retail was because I was working at that production facility, and when the retail work was low, my boss would go out and be smoozing with other people and be what other work can I bring in? So the one time he brought us Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom. And so we we did this like the speaker shrouds and things
Mhm.
like that. So then I was working with Bert, and he did like all by hand, like drew up what he wanted everything to be themed like, and then I turned them into shop drawings. And we
Cool.
worked with the Imagineering team, because when we weren't actually part of Imagineering at the time. When I had interviewed for the job originally, it was with Imagineering. By the time the job was created, they were like, "Oh no, you're not. Now retail is their own thing, and then now the wood shop is part of Central Shops." And so then I ended up right before I got laid off in 2020. They actually adopted us back into Imagineering, and I got my official Imagineering name tag. But segue anyway. So, but. Yeah, so with Sorcerers, we were also working closely with like the show set design team and things at Imagineering, and we would get direction then from them with all the like technical equipment and all of that jazz.
Mhm.
Nice.
Do you have a preference on what you prefer to plan or design?
I like the like smaller things where you got to, because the bigger the project, then kind of like the less involved like you got to
Mhm.
be,
Mhm.
because it was more generalized, like, oh yeah, I decided that this space should be gray. But like
Mhm.
when you're working on something smaller like this specific thing, and you really get to dive in to the details of how it
Mhm.
goes together, and it really becomes like your baby.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, and that makes me think, like, when we think of Imagineering, we think of everything has an intention of a storyline.
Mhm.
How do you balance that when you're working in, you described it needs to go between this space and this space, and how do you decide your design decisions based off telling a story when you have like a limited area to work with?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of almost felt like that made things easier. Like,
Mm,
they say like, having that blank sheet of paper, like it's almost
yeah.
overwhelming. Like it was nice to have, restrictions, and then getting to play within those restrictions instead of kind of getting overwhelmed of like, I can do anything. You're like, well, I can't do anything. It has to go here and here and here and here. And that was kind of the beauty of like the role of being a store designer, was that like you had to straddle between the the art director, the Imagineering, the people who are very protective of the storyline, and then the retail team who are just about their product and
Mhm.
making sure that their hardware will fit and that they have enough face outs and they can get enough product sold.
Mhm.
So it was kind of an interesting role to play that I actually really enjoyed, having kind of those restrictions on it.
Yeah.
And then also like me being like a Disney nerd, like would be like pushing harder almost for some of those, story moments versus, the people who came in from outside retail, who just, some of them just did not understand the difference between going to a shopping mall and,
Mhm.
paying to go walk through a store
Yeah.
because it's themed to, Star Wars or the
Mhm.
turn of the century or Tomorrowland. Like some of them just never quite understood that.
Do you think that gave you kind of an edge over that you had that Disney touch
I think
versus?
so. I mean, I remember one time that someone called me up and they were just like, so which store does the Stitch ride exit into? We're trying to figure this out, and we knew that you would know because you know the parks. And I was like, coincidentally, the answer is both the stores you're talking about. I was like, it has a couple of theaters, and they empty out into the Merchant of Venus and in the Mickey Star Traders. Yeah, so I kind of became the person that they would come to when they had like questions about like why things were the way they were, because there's always a reason, even if it
Mhm.
looks like you're like, why is this thing over here? And a lot of people would just be like, yeah, just get rid of it. And you'd be like, no, 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 no. It's
Mhm.
Well,
there for a
Yeah.
reason.
that's what I'm thinking is like it takes a true talent, because you're not working with something like an attraction that tells you a very blatant story. You're working with something that's a little bit more abstract and trying to get people to understand why you put something here and what story you're telling. Did you find that was difficult, or did you find that And also, separate question, did you find that you were creating your own stories that maybe people would never know, that you thought, I know what the story is of this, but it may not translate? How did you?
I think a lot of the time, since we were going in and kind of updating spaces that already existed with like a few fixtures and whatnot, that it was more like figuring out what was there and keeping up with that storyline and making sure that everything matched. I don't know that I ever actually like made up a new storyline in my head. I remember one time we were clearing out a bunch of old drawings because we were losing the storage space. And so my coworker and I were going through all these things, and we found like old storylines for places. And I think one of us kept it, but it was like this. And now it's funny because it was for the confectionery, and now they've redone it and like added their own storyline again. But it was like, oh gosh, I wish I could remember, like, but it had like the names of the proprietors and all of that stuff. And we were like, why is this not something that's like
So cool.
out there and used? Because that would be so awesome.
Like the legends of the confectionery.
Yeah. Yeah.
Book unpublished.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
Well, going back to what you said about being a Disney person and how some people can get very protective of a storyline. So here on our show, we're also big Disney nerds. And a lot of times we get into friendly arguments about change and what, things getting updated because we're so attached to things from our childhood and we're known for our love of the nostalgia of it. So when you redesign some of these locations that may hold sentimental value to guests, how are you able to bring, fresh ideas to the space while also, trying to keep that nostalgia there? Or did you just say, forget it, too bad?
I mean, some people I worked with did just say, forget it, too bad. Yeah, it was, I'm trying to think of like, well, like with the Star Wars things and stuff, like I really tried to like bring in like references back to things. I was always mindful of the past. I'm definitely now become very, I tried to be very receptive to new things, but now I'm going back and being like at the end of the D23 announcements at this last thing, I was like, that's it, done. I'm glad I don't have to work on these projects because I'm not happy about what they are taking out and I don't want to be involved in that. I tried to, be respectful of like what was, and one time I was even describing it like after I got laid off in 2020 and I was trying to work on my resume, and I was like, and I was talking to the person who was helping me. I was like, it's almost like it's more historic preservation than it is like new stuff. Like people on the outside kind of don't understand like that you're working on this place that's now 50 years old. So there's a lot of stuff that you're running into and the nostalgia, and you're trying to preserve, but then also, honor that it's not a museum. We gotta change it up. But I remember when we were working on the Town Square Theater, and they were demoing out everything that was Expo Hall, and we got in there, and there was this old painting that was back there that had like all the different Disney characters, the Bill Justice mural, and I took a whole bunch of pictures of it before they took it out. And then one day we went in there and there was only like one square left, and it was just the characters from the Black Cauldron. And so
all the characters.
Yeah, I know. So somewhere I have like this cute little picture of like this random characters that are on there. I was like, oh, I wish we could have like saved it and put it. But I mean, like even when our facility shut down at the warehouse, like I emailed the archives and I was like, does anybody want to come out here and like save all this stuff? Because we had they were the ones who did all of the animated windows on Main Street. So there were like just stacked floor to ceiling, just all these old window displays of the animated windows. Like they had a series of Hunchback ones. They were just kind of gathering dust in there. And they were actually the ones who, because they had saved all those windows several years ago when they decided to do what was it? They decided to put in, they were refurbishing the windows, and they realized they had the Christmas Carol ones. So they were able to refurbish the Christmas Carol ones that we had just had sitting in our warehouse for like years and put those in while they were taking out the existing windows that they were refurbishing. So they didn't have to just cover over the windows and have nothing there.
Oh.
But
I'm also really intrigued. I want to go back to the storytelling piece for a second because I'm just so intrigued with how this works. But obviously, when I'm thinking of, I have a friend who works for a designer in retail design for them. And he's always constantly having to think of designs and how to set things up to really kind of maximize and optimize profit flow and kind of where your eyes are going to go and all of that. And obviously with Disney, we just think there has to be a story. It has to be, you know, you have to think of every little detail. Are there ever times that those two maybe don't go hand in hand together where it's more important to optimize what's going to be the best in terms of bringing in profit to the store versus maybe not as visually to the guest, I guess, in a sense?
yeah, I felt like that was the constant battle the last few years that I was there because they were just trying to be all about the product. And so like we had kind of taller fixtures that had like themed ornamentation on the top, and it became like well, the whole redesign of the World of Disney, for example. So it became all about the sight lines and the product. And so the fixtures got shorter and shorter over time. The floor fixtures, the gondolas, and the ornamentation became less and less. And one of the things that just made me giggle like after I had left was when I saw the new fixtures that they did for the Wish, and then I think at the same time they redid the main stores on the Dream and the Magic. I think it was particularly the Wish ones where I looked at them and I was like, there's no reason why the middle panel of these fixtures couldn't be wood or like a wood laminate, a wood grain, like look like wood in the outer edges of them. But they put just a white panel because they were just convinced that if you put anything behind the product, it would distract from the product.
Oh, really?
And I was like, it has to be a white or a neutral or I was like, you know how these things just fly off they're flying out of like everything, like no one's be like, oh, I didn't notice that the new, you know, whatever, the new Mickey plush or the new Dooney bag or the new whatever was there because it was in front of a panel that was a different color.
Yeah, right. That didn't stop me from getting this.
right.
But it's funny you mentioned that too, because it's I feel like some of the look of I guess maybe a good, I don't want to say this as an example, as like a bad thing, but I would say I worked at Mouse Gear. So that was where I did my college program. So looking at Mouse Gear, what it was versus the store that it is now, it's a little bit more like, I would say maybe like sterile and cleaner and less of like that traditional Disney look that we see. But now that you mentioned that, it's kind of obvious that's
all a neutral,
where they're going.
Neutral background.
Yeah. Interesting.
And I feel the same way. I actually worked at World of Disney on my college program. So seeing it now, it's almost unrecognizable
we
the
don't like
hours of time I spent
It's so
in there.
funny. So today I went to Cast Connection and they have one of the alligators, the crocodiles, from World of Disney.
Oh.
But so I had my husband take my picture because I have a picture of me from like 15 years ago of the original crocodile was actually a merchandisable fixture. It had show wall panel in it, and it was in the villain's room, so it was the jewelry room. So it had, you know, just the loop peg hooks for jewelry. And then I actually redid World of Disney like 3 times. So we did like a not fully re-theme of World of Disney, but we added on the addition in the back. And when we did that, we redid the villain's room, and so they took the crocodiles off stage and they brought them back to our warehouse and they filled in the stomachs and they repainted them because the ones in the original villain's room had like a very like aged like metal look to them, and so they repainted them to look character accurate. So they have one of those in Cast Connection now in their little section where they just put like random, it's basically like a graveyard for things that came out of my old office. But so I took a picture next to it and then I posted it, and one of my old coworkers who paints all the characters still. And he was like, "Is one of our crocodiles still around?" And I was like, "Yeah, go to Cast Connection, when you're not in Germany sailing the new ship over."
Oh, cool.
But-
Oh, well, I think I want to know a little bit. Is there a project that you worked on that sticks with you the most with your previous history?
I think like one of my favorites was when I did the shop at the Dolphin, just because I got complete free reign of that because it's not a Disney shop. So there was no art director. It was not like, I later worked on the shops for the Riviera and the redo of the Caribbean Beach with the resorts team. And the like lead Imagineer for that was like, "I didn't even know there was a store at the Dolphin." He's like, "I don't think I've actually even been in there." So like I got to do whatever, not like whatever I wanted. Like they gave me the design of what the design team was doing for the lobby when they were redoing the lobby of the Dolphin. And then they said, just kind of make it go with that vibe. So I got to do and that was my first time specifying flooring and picking paint colors for walls, because up until then I was mainly doing the floor fixtures and the cash wraps and just all the stuff that was movable, and then the wall bays. And so I got to really do a lot of stuff they had never done before. And I got to I did the back wall bay. I framed it this big gold frame, and then I was thinking back to like the original world of Disney and how it had all the intricate like characters carved into things. So I wanted to do like that, and they were like, "We don't have anybody who's gonna like carve characters." But we had a guy at the time who was really into 3D printing. So he was like, "If you come late," so I worked with like a guy who modeled the characters that I picked out, and then got us the files, and then we 3D printed in-house the like 4 corners. So I did Kronk, Orange Bird, Baymax, and Figment, and they were all painted in gold, so they looked like they were part of the frame around the main wall bay in the back of the store. And then I even got to do the graphics in there. So I did graphics at the very tops of the wall of all the wall bays, and I just got to go through the whole like resource cafe that they have for like marketing. And so I was like, well, this is going to be like the wall bay theme to pictures of the resorts and the studios and whatnot. And then I even did the posters that like are on the columns in the hallway that lead down to the shop, because the shop's kind of out of the way from the lobby, and it's like, "This way to the Disney gifts and sundries."
Oh, so fun.
Yeah.
I want to really quick ask, and I feel like I'm asking all the questions and stealing everyone's time. So sorry, everyone, for jumping in. But you said something earlier about 3D printing, and I just was curious, how much does that change kind of the industry and how you guys work, or how you worked that in your role now?
I thought it was a really it made things a lot easier. Like one of the ways that we used it was when we redid Uptown Jewelers. They had come up with, we were able to just like buy one of like an applique and then like copy it and then just 3D print it and paint it. And so a lot of the ornamentation on some of those things is actually just 3D printed and not actual real wood things. And I'm sure by now they are able to do, then you can add like a hidden Mickey into there or whatnot. You make your own, really customize what you're doing without having to put a lot of extra effort.
Yeah. I'm sure it cuts the time to produce everything too, and quite a bit too.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to go back to something you said earlier. You mentioned D23 and the announcements, and you had kind of an emotional reaction and then we moved away from it.
Yeah.
But I really like to hear what former Imagineers think of the direction of the future of Disney parks and Imagineering. And I just kind of want to get an overall take of your thoughts of where they're going.
Yeah, I mean, there were some things that I liked, but I'm gonna be honest, my first reaction was very in the negative. Like my first reaction was, um, it looks like poor Bruce Bond has been held captive on the stage and is being forced to like announce these things, projects against his will. Um, but I mean, I've kind of come around on some of them because my husband showed me some articles about like why, like someone wrote up a big thing on Reddit about like why they would have to be like demolishing the rivers of America. And I
I
was
think I
like,
probably
We
read the
probably read
same
that.
one.
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And I was like, all right, I guess
Yeah.
he's got a good point. But because that was my first reaction was like, why would you do that? You know?
Mhm.
I think that was our consensus too. After we read it, we were all like, yeah, all right, fine. Logic.
I'm like,
Yeah, we
at the
get
end, I was like,
it.
okay,
Mhm.
you've justified for me the having to like why they don't need water there anymore, but you haven't sold me on cars.
Mhm.
Like
True.
I can't get behind
Mhm.
the cars in Frontierland. And then I've just been like ignoring the villains thing. Like I'm like I don't even want to know like where they're going to end up sticking that. Like I don't. Um,
It's
yeah.
it's interesting to hear your reaction to it. Katie and I were actually there in the room, and so I think we were so overwhelmed with
There was a
excitement.
lot.
We
Well, there was a lot
never
going on in that room.
right. We never had the moment to stop and think, wait, what are we
Yeah.
losing to
Yeah.
get? So it's funny to hear like a lot of people had that reaction immediately, and
Yep.
we were just so over. There was music and dancing.
Yeah, you
and all this
guys,
razzle
you guys
dazzle,
were
and
in,
we're just
you
like,
guys were
whoa.
in the moment,
Yeah.
and I'm at home
Yeah.
We were
like,
truly in the moment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And meanwhile, I'm like,
Mm.
I did not sign up for the like 3 until like 1 a.m.
Oh
thing.
yeah.
I was not told this was
oh,
happening.
I know.
We were like, this is the time to be alive. Then afterwards, we were like, do you think that resonated with people outside the room? Or was it just us?
Yeah. But I mean, I've been to a lot of those like announcements and things, and I've been like caught up in the moment and really excited about things. So, but yeah, I mean, there were things that I was like, okay, well, this is going to be cool. Like, I'm excited to see what they do with the animal kingdom because that like makes sense to me. Like, I can understand, even though my son, well, that was the other thing. My other reaction was, you're taking out the 2 remaining kids' play areas.
Yeah.
True. Yeah.
Because my son is 9 and he loves to go. Like we're always spending time at the Boneyard at Dinoland, and then I had just introduced him to. Well, we had taken him over to Tom Sawyer Island like before the pandemic, but since he doesn't remember the before times, so we're like, "You've been here, I promise." He's like, "I don't remember." So like now, like he's like, "Oh, we gotta go over to Tom Sawyer Island." Like he loves like exploring everything around there, and I'm like, "You're like, yay for new rides and stuff," but like now we've just got the like. Is it even still Pixar themed? The like little play area outside of whatever Mouse Gear is called now.
I don't know what it's called now.
We just stood out there the other day, Katie.
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
really.
My son played there the last time we went to Epcot. And like it was so funny because like one of our neighbors was like messaging me because the kids had like set up a play date on their own like at the local park, and then she was like, so apparently they decided to set up a play date. Like I didn't know about it. They're supposed to meet at 5:30. And I was like, we are parking at Epcot. And she's like, oh, thank goodness. Cause we're actually supposed to go meet friends at the parks too. And so then they ended up messaging me like, how are you at Epcot? Because they want to all go to the playground. I was like, he's already on his way to the playground. I was like, they ended up having a play date at the park anyway, just at the park at Epcot.
Yeah. And it doubles.
And they like played for like an hour, just like, because that's what they actually we don't. That's a lie. There is another play place. There's the one at the end of Mission Space, and that's why we ended up at that one because everyone needed to go to the bathroom, so they had to leave Mission Space, and then no one wanted to go back into Mission Space to go to the playground. And I was like, well, just go to the other playground. Oh, look, now your friend is coming, so that playground is just as fun.
Yep.
Is there one at Storybook Circus? I remember there used to
yeah.
be, but
In
when they
Dumbo,
changed it, I'm not as familiar.
There's
Okay,
still
yeah.
some
Yeah.
stuff there. Yeah. Katie and I.
But it's
were
like
over
the
there.
cue for Dumbo, because their concept when they redid
Right.
with the
Yeah.
with the dueling Dumbos was that you would,
Mhm.
instead of waiting in line, you would play in the play area.
Yep.
Mhm.
But now there isn't really a line, so it's mainly
True.
you want to play in the
Yeah.
play area. Well, when you're done playing, you can go
Then you can get on.
Dumbo.
Yeah.
Yep. I'll never forget. It worked out so well. I went with a friend there and she brought her kid who was maybe I think he was maybe 2 years old at the time, had a horrible time waiting, finally made it to the play area and loved it. And then we had to pick up and move to the next part. Was not a fan of that. That was the end. I was like, what? This line again? So it worked
Yeah.
too well.
Yeah.
Well, our show is all about creating original projects for the parks that jump out of our own crazy imagination. So we always love to ask our guests, especially, those who actually worked in Imagineering, if you could create any project for a Disney experience without any limits, what would it be? It doesn't have to be Disney IP. And we always say no budgets or space restrictions. So we really like to think outside the box.
Well, I definitely wouldn't want it to be Disney IP. No offense. But so I've always had this, well, not always, but for a long time, I've had this idea of wanting to integrate the function of like the conveyor belt sushi restaurant,
Ooh.
but
already
put
love
it,
this.
Yep.
but put it in Frontierland, like it's like a mining, like gem mining, but it's still a restaurant. But the only thing that comes by is their like golden cornbread.
Ooh.
Oh, I can get
Wonderful.
behind this. I can get behind this.
Gold mining for cornbread.
Yeah.
Ooh, I love it. Or we could expand and put like ketchup and mustard on there.
Yeah, I'm sure it wouldn't stick with just, but I was like, golden cornbread. Like, I'm sure it would evolve into having more than just
Well,
cornbread.
you
Oh,
could
wait,
put
that makes
chicken
way more
nuggets,
sense.
like they're golden
Yeah.
nuggets.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's
I love
throwing
that
it back
idea.
to when there was the
fry
McDonald's
cart.
fry cart.
sounds
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Add that to it. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
that's
feel like
fun.
there's so much you could do to have it kind of I could just like picture like the mining
Yeah.
like thing
Mhm.
I'm
coming
sold.
down. Yeah.
Just gut Pecos Bills, start over and
Yeah.
implement this design immediately.
Yeah.
Well, at the
Oh, that's
risk
a
of
good one.
sounding punny, I think we've struck gold today. That's great. Well, also before we wrap up, I do want to give you an opportunity to share any of your current projects that you're working on or more information about your company, Neon Flamingo Studios. I'll pass it
Yeah.
over.
So, because I got laid off in 2020, I decided to start my own company. So I do full service interior design. I do a lot of work with other design firms that do like family entertainment centers, so like bowling alleys and arcades and laser tag and all of that fun stuff. But recently, one of my old coworkers from the production facility was like, so they do similar stuff to what we had been doing at the time, but they do like stuff for all the local theme parks. But then they got a state park that needed some new exhibits done for them. And they were like, they're like, we understand what we need to do, but we need a designer to like put it all down. So I'm putting together some exhibits for a state park, which I'm really excited about because I've always kind of wanted to get into like museum and exhibit design, but that's like
Yeah.
its a whole other like animal.
Yeah. How
So I'm
cool.
doing that. I'm doing some bowling alleys. I have done some work for some of the third party people at Disney Springs for when they need to refresh their retail spaces. So yeah, I can. And everything that I did for Disney, I can do for you.
Perfect.
It's so cool hearing how a story starts in someone's, plan for their life. Your major was architecture, and now you're thinking about something so unique like interior design for a state park. Like, did you ever think? It's just so cool
Yeah.
to see how life takes you somewhere you never expected and in really cool ways. So congratulations to you
Thank you.
for getting where you really should be.
Yeah.
It's been a journey, but it's fun to be here.
Well, Becky, it's been an absolute pleasure to have this time with us today. And we can't thank you enough for taking time out of your day to talk with us. And once again, Becky Browne Allen.
Thank you guys so much. It was so great talking with you all.
Thanks, Becky.
Thanks.
And remember, there's always more magic on the way. Season 3 is just around the corner, premiering on January 6th, and the villains are taking over. We are so excited to finally share everything we've been working on behind the scenes with some awesome new projects and incredible guests lined up.
Until next time, we hope you and your loved ones have a wonderful holiday season. And remember, if you can dream it,
you can make a podcast about it. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Bye.